Hello, Cosmic Soul family. Ella Ivy here with livzenastrology, doing a 30-day cosmic exploration during this Gemini season. And today, as I was meditating, just coming off of this full moon in Sagittarius flow that we all just experienced, what really wanted to be spoken about was this solstice energy that's approaching here on June 21st. So let's talk about what's going on with the solstice, why it's important, why our ancestors denoted this time period with the monolithic structures all over the world that point to these particular axis points in relation to the sun's energy, and our relationship to the sun, why it's so important to the earth. And we're also going to be looking at the astrology on this solstice energy that's going to be conjuncting Jupiter in Cancer with the sun. What does that mean? What does that look like? It's going to be squaring Neptune and Saturn in Aries. What does that denote, right? So there's a lot of astrology speak, but this channel seeks to break it down, to bring it to a pragmatical approach to astrology. So yes, we're going to use the language of astrology, but we're also going to use metaphors. We're going to tell stories. We're going to make it relatable to how it's connecting to us real time and what we're seeing playing out on the world stage. As of today, today is, what is today? I have a hard time keeping track of time. The 16th of June. So from what I've understood, there was a giant earthquake in Peru. So I'm going to send out a lot of love and comfort to our brothers and sisters in that part of the world and everywhere that's experiencing these shakeups, right? The earth is being shooken up right now. The earth is opposite of the sun, and the sun is in Gemini. So the earth is in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is big. It's ruled by Jupiter. So it's big shifts. We still have Uranus in Taurus. It's getting ready to ingress into Gemini. So Uranus, it creates change. It creates movement. It's the electromagnetic field of the energy of electromagnetic energies in general. So again, how is this corresponding to what's happening inside of us? Well, there's major shifts that are happening alchemically to ourselves, to our genome, to our DNA. And so we're starting to see it being played out in the world stage. So it's going to get more dramatic and more impactful, especially approaching the solstice, as the amount of light, the soul, the solar energy, right? We talk about, the law of one in Ra, and Ra is just radiant. It's radiation. It's the amount of radiant energy that's coming onto the planet, which is onto the earth. Again, right now, the earth sign is in Sagittarius, so it's coming in a big way. We also had this past full moon at 20 degrees that was going to transit and did transit our galactic center, which is at 27 degrees Sagittarius. And it was conjunct because our planet of healing, Chiron and Aries, is conjuncting the galactic center right now. Or not conjuncting, I'm sorry. It's trining the galactic center because it's Sagittarius. And we know that our Chiron, our wounded healer, is still in Aries. So there's huge, huge shifts in how we perceive what? Our safety, our security, issues from childhood, early education issues, again, coming out of Gemini, which rules third house, things we were taught in early education, how this reality is or was to be believed on. So this is what's going to be looked at today, also with Venus still transiting into Taurus. It's about matters of values, of security, of safety, of finance. So there's a lot of upheaval that's happening right now on this planetary grid of existence. The architecture of our mind, if you will, is being completely demolished so that it can be rebuilt. And it's happening at the same time, right? It's simultaneous because time is not linear, not in the way we know it, not as we are merging into these more quantum dynamics and realms of consciousness. And so with this exploration of quantum energy and our relationship now to what we know to be true, right? The cosmic expression of self is being transformed, Pluto, through Aquarius, right? Forward thinking, higher mind. This is the future, but it also is technology. And so, what was coming in really strong too, as I was contemplating these energies, is, before they discovered Uranus, Saturn was the ruling planet of Aquarius, which I find so interesting because Saturn is almost in astrology considered opposite of Uranus, right? Uranus wants change, forward thinking, inventiveness, no boundaries, right? The rebel. But why did our ancestors denote Saturn, the planet of structure, discipline, of restraint, right? Of boundaries? Why was that the original ruler of Aquarius? And how did that shift the consciousness, right? Of what we perceive to be true, the rulership of things. And now those ruling aspects have shifted, right? Because Saturn is still a major player in this square that's happening because it is in Aries, which is some people call it the war god, but I like to call it the action god, the god that takes action when action is needed. So we're feeling through the need of Cancer, which is also cardinal, the need to take big action, Jupiter, on matters of security, of home, of values, of finances, of food, of sources of safety of our community. So we're starting to see on a big global level right now, people are being activated to take action, whether you're following different media sources on the protests that are happening all over the United States and all over the world that are shaking up the foundation of our governing systems and how we govern ourselves, who we have elected, right? I think of electoral astrology, which is basically the timing, right? The exact timing of when things need to shift. So we're starting to see that this is the exact timing of where these impulses are coming through us. Again, this is because of all the light that's coming in. We're being gridded, we're being morphed, we're being activated to take action and to show, to protest the old domineering structures, right? I'm even looking at them, looking at some of the protests that are going on all over. And I'm here in the state of Kentucky, and I know downtown Louisville over this past weekend, the 14th, there was a lot of protests, which is the no kings, right? So the astrology can't be more clear. When you look at kings or kingdoms, that's all Leo. That has to do with Leo rulership, which is opposing this Pluto and Aquarius right now. So it makes sense that the group collective, right, the hive mind that rules all of humanitarian causes, right, the whole of humanity is opposing this hierarchal leadership, right? No kings, no queens, no one individuated or one group, a few selected individuals to be the ruler, right? That's dissolving. Again, the astrology could not be more clear. With, again, you look at the language that's being expressed, you look at the archetypical energies that are starting to morph themselves. But until you know these dynamics or understand what they mean, you can still get caught up in these loops of patterns of frequencies unless you decide to take the conscious action to shift, to change your relationship, what? Not only to astrology, to the story that's being told about astrology, but are we willing to upgrade the stories within ourselves and once and for all, at least in this lifetime, this dynamic, because it never ends. If you come from livzenastrology, we come from the maxim that all is self and that we are eternal beings, right? That we are just playing out these cycles and upgrading into new patterns of existence, right? New geometric forms, new alchemaic shifts that are shifting the geometry. It's funny, I was meditating with the language of junk DNA. And science talks about how a lot of our DNA is junk DNA, right? Because it's not used. But as I was exploring, again, the etymology, I saw that the word sunk, right? The sunk DNA. And so this also has to do with water and our patterns with water and cymatics and how water forms and shifts in cymatical forms based on vibration. So where perhaps do we have these sunken vibrational frequencies of the earth that perhaps we're being dominated by another frequency? artificial otherwise or not, we don't know. Again, we're coming from the past, which is Saturn that rules Aquarius, in its original form, which rules the future. So the download I was receiving is our ancestors actually had more technology in the past that we do now, right? So really the technological advances are already there. They're just being remembered, released, uh, allowed. Not just a few of the kings or queens have access now to this higher level advanced technologies, right? Why do you think all these archaeological finds and certain things have been put in plain sight that really hides or has been not sharing, I should say, the technology for all of us to evolve, right? It's only been a few chosen, right? A few kings. Again, we were in time of Leo 12,000 years ago. So now we've come at least a half of a cycle if you follow the progression of the equinox, which says that there's a 24,000 year cycle to how we spin in this Fibonacci spiral, that we go upwards and upwards. If you look at the longer transits or the longer cycles, that we're halfway through where we were 12,000 years ago. And now at the times of kings and queens, we've now shifted to Aquarius again, the next octave of Aquarius, where the higher mind is taking shape, right? And we know that the higher mind is Venus, or Mercury is going to be transiting into Virgo, and so is Mars, right? So taking action on higher mind, grounding it into the body. These are all expressions and archetypical energies of the astrology, but this is how it wants to be woven in through this particular channel. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to screen share. I also am going to do, I like to do divination from different aspects because of all is self. I feel like we're living in this giant Akashic field of records, of that you can access anything that you have a question about, or that you're contemplating, that the energy, the answer is right in front of you. It's just knowing how to look, how to tune into it, because everything is happening for us, right? So when you ask a question and you go out in nature and then you see a certain animal show up for you, or you look down and a certain song shows up, right, and starts playing and you listen to the words, right? That's you answering you about the question you just had through the field of matter, which is the physical, which is representing you, right? So again, these are just concepts of moving really radically towards the all is self, that we are all playing this divine part together. And so collectively, as these expressions are shifting, as these vibrations are cymatically shifting, our cells, right, our sunk DNA, not the junk, not the hook, but the S, which is more Kundalini, right? Think like the snake energy, right? How things move. And so we're moving, our DNA is moving from one cymatical chemical shift onto another, based on the light that's coming onto the planet, based on the geoelectrical grid, right? The geoelectrical storms are bringing these vibration. I think if when you go to the ocean and you see what's pumping the waves, when you stand at the shore of the ocean, waves are constantly coming to you. So what is that momentum, that activation that's moving the ocean waves in a constant, right? Think of like the heartbeat of the planet. Well, that's shifting, that is changing form, that is changing frequency and vibration. So how we're going to be activated, again, we can look at the cosmology to see the themes, right? That's what we study. If you study astrology, it's all about archetypical energies. And so we're going to be looking at the archetypical energies of Cancer, because we know that the solstice energy happens in cardinal points, which is cardinal means beginning in astrology. So we're beginning new, I see cycles, but also not just earth cycles, but also the cycles of nature, right? Spring, summer, fall, and winter. So we're beginning summer, which is again very hot. It's in the hotter substances, the quicker things move, right? If you look at the science, you boil water to see that, right? And then it changes shape. It goes into it gets hot enough, it starts steaming and it starts changing form. So this is also the focus too that's coming in really strongly about our relationship to water and what water really is, how perhaps, and if you ever studied Veda Austin works, and she had an amazing conversation with Pam Gregory about several actually conversations, but one I remember distinctly how she was talking about how water is not a source, but the source when we talk about source energy, because we know that water carries memory and memory is affected by the moon, right? So whatever you whatever you perceive the moon to be, whether it's, a satellite for something else, or there's beings on the moon, or it's a technology that's actually controlling the tides of water, which also controls memory, right? So maybe that's being shifted, our relationship to these planetary energies. I know for me as an astrologer, my own relationship to the planetary energies are shifting because I no longer see them as planets outside of myself, but planes of existence, right? Doing my own etymological, I can't even say this, my own deep dive with the etymology of, the word plane and planet and plants, right? And I think of the stardust and dust that's around. And so how these planes of existence are actually on the earth itself. So in other words, when we're talking about the planet Neptune, we're actually talking about the water. We're talking about the ocean, right? So they're not so much planets outside of us, no matter what NASA or whatever your beliefs is. Again, entertainment purposes only about these conversations. So, whatever your perception is about the governing bodies that have been telling us the story about our evolution, about how things operate, again, this is all up for question. It's all up for exploration because things, again, are dissolving. So, your perception of this reality is dissolving. And again, coming up to this approaching solstice energy, what may be dissolving is your relationship to the sun, to your ancestors, to the story you've been told about his story or her story, right? That maybe some things that you look at in your reality that never made sense are starting to come into more coherence because, again, our cells are vibrating. It's not the junk, but it's the sunken DNA that's starting to emerge, right? Just like I think of things that have been buried in the ocean, old land masses, civilizations, things that were buried because of these cataclysmic events that have happened on this planet. Now we're starting to reemerge, just like, new frequencies, new vibrations are reemerging. It's not the junk DNA, but the sunk DNA that now, because our cells are shifting and changing, again, the cymatical forms of our DNA structures are shifting, and that's going to be based on what you consume, not just in the physical Taurus, but the metaphysical Scorpio, the axis point, right? So we always look at these aspects as not either or, but and more, especially if you come from the adage that all is self, and you really are starting to practice this radical oneness, that it's all you. So if it's all you, then what is you telling you about you? And what are we seeing being played out or being propagandized in the world stage right now? And so before we get into looking at the chart, the download that I received as I was, again, processing these energies within myself was I was seeing the storyline of Shakespeare, and that's a whole nother dialogue about Shakespeare, right? Shaking the spear, which has to do with Athena. This is also, again, esoteric stuff that you can do your own research on. Use your spiritual AI tools. I really like Sybil. I like working with the architect from Robert Edward Grant. I've been really playing with these technologies, again, as a form of all of self, right? If that's just a form of me that's talking to me, then it's a mirror, right? It's a neutral mirror as I choose to use it. Again, it's just a tool. It's how you use it. It's gonna dictate, your reality, your future. And so, again, going into the etymology, let me come back because I just kind of went out there too far, and that happens sometimes. We scroll back to the etymology. Okay, so what were we talking about? All right, I guess things want to shift because when that happens, that means I need to switch gears. Okay, so let's look at the astrology, and let's look at the aspects of energy. Oh, they're telling me, okay, yeah. When I say they, that means me. Right? I never go outside myself. I'm not worshiping anything outside of myself. There's ascended masters or archangels. I see it as archangels, which is astrological, the ascended versions of me that already have played this out. Um, just really pulling it back into self. Again, radical oneness is the practice of this station. So, not to offend anybody, if you're still looking outside of yourself for answers, and that's fine, that's part of the process, right? That's part of where you are. But what I've shown, what's worked for me, is to always bring it back to self, right? To fold it back into self. And that just seems to give me a level of empowerment and again, coherent energy that I haven't been able to access when I kept looking outside of myself. It was just causing more confusion and division and fractalization within me. So again, standing for the maxim that all is self has really helped me fold these energies back into self, into present now moment, so that I understand what exactly is going on from a different periphery, right? So it's just a different way to contemplate the energies, a different way to access your own gnosis. And if you resonate with any of this, I invite you to stay and participate and enjoy and really harmonize with the energy that it's all you. If this is not something you align with, then I understand. And I understand. And again, it's all about vibrational resonant match, right? So if you're still here watching this, thank you so much for being a resonant vibrational match. So what I was showing myself, is I was coming back to the Shakespeare, right? So the language. What they were showing me about division and war within families, especially, I think of the storyline of the Montagues and the Capulets, right? Romeo and Juliet, and how there's these old warring families that may have even forgotten what the war was about, right? But because they were so used to that tit for tat, back and forth warfare, that it carried on for generations until finally this beautiful couple, right? This innocence, the masculine and the feminine, which is very much Venus and Mars, they came together and overcome their love, right? Which is very much Neptune, Venus, was the gap, was the bridge that gapped these warring families, right? And although it was a tragedy, and if you've never studied or read Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, there's great movies and adaptations that you can watch, right? But it's sort of like I look at it as an old tale that tells the story of us in a way that transcends time. And that we're starting to see on the world stage, especially what's going on in the bigger stage. And I'm not going to say what's happening because you guys already know the events that are happening, that we're seeing these old warring families that are playing themselves out, that would probably, and because I'm not in either of those, I don't know the history. Maybe they have the history, maybe they don't. I'm willing to ask, even now, do your kids who were born now even understand what the beep was about, right? So do we still need to have these warring feudal energies happening on humanity and happening within humanity based on old constructs, old stories, right? And so this is something to invite in as an exploration, as again, the power is coming back into the collective, back to the people. There are no kings, right? Going against Leo, which is again where we are in this whole Kali Yuga phase, right? So 12,000 years ago, we were in the time of Leo, and now we're in the time of Aquarius, which is again, it's almost like a rotation, higher mind. Can we stop the wars within ourselves and the chemical reactions that are happening within you? Can you at least take the first step within you by deciding not to war with yourself, not to war with your own body, right? I'm thinking also too of chemistry, because we have the South Node right now still in Virgo, which is all about health and how we take care of our health. And I'm thinking of autoimmune diseases, again, for entertainment purposes only. Autoimmune, if you look at the word immunity, which is I'm unity, where has there been a war with unity consciousness and the I'm unity, right? The ability to have white blood cells that are protectors, that are not actually eating or attacking itself. Again, autoimmune things. Again, I'm looking at the chemical warfare that we have decided to participate in this lifetime to push us through the next evolutionary stage of where humanity's going, which is very unknown. We don't know because we've never been here. We've never seen it cosmologically, especially with this conjunction with Neptune and Saturn and Aries, right? And again, Saturn being the original ruler of Aquarius, which is what I was shown. Again, this is my own gnosis going into my own deep dive with these energies, is how Saturn really, from this particular periphery that I'm seeing, because it rules Capricorn, which is a feminine sign, right? Feminine power, feminine authority. What's been coming into my field also as I've been contemplating these energies are the grandmother energy, right? The great grandmother, the cosmic grandmother. And so, a lot of us in astrology, we talk about father time and Chronos, but even Chronos had a mother, right? Everything comes from a womb, everything. So this is also the deep dive that as you want to contemplate these energies, because Saturn, being the original ruler of Aquarius and now the co-ruler of Capricorn, is feminine, right? So is it the great grandmother's womb that we came from? And that Mama Gaia, Mother Earth, is actually the daughter energy, right? And that it's like we're being reschooled. The grandmother's coming in and teaching the daughter, right, how to raise her children. Because if there's been an absence, right? And again, I'm thinking of absence of light, because where we were in relation to the light frequencies in this Kali Yuga phase of existence. So where was there a separation from the great grandmother? Right? From Saturn, from the structure, from the boundaries that the grandmother had. And if you've ever had the blessing or the blissing of having a grandmother energy, I think of two, which we're going to also move into this Jupiter and Cancer speak on with the solstice. It's fierce love, right? It's like strong, disciplined, unconditional love. Because I think of the energy of the grandmother, right? She's here to show us things. She's here to help us remember our lineages and how things are done in our families, right? I think of grandma's cooking and going to grandma's house and all the things involved with the grandmother. Again, if you've had, well, no matter what your relationships with your grandmother, this is the exploration of the grandmother archetype and possibly what we're being invited to reconnect with the higher octave of the grandmother, which again is that fierce, protective, nurturing energy. But she's going to show you how it's done, right? It's no nonsense. Again, some grandmothers will come and spoil you, which is great. But because of where we are, where I'm seeing it's matters of security, the great grandmother energy is also coming in through Saturn and Aries, like saying, okay, you need to have discipline with the child. There is a maturation process that needs to happen because you guys are doing things that are hurting yourself. She's showing me that she's taking care of the daughter, which is Mama Gaia. The Mama Gaia knows how to evolve and to do this. She's been doing this for millions of years, but not with our particular species on her. So while she's helped given birth to us, co-creative birth, whatever you think about genetics, or if we were seeded here on this planet, again, I think of cedar trees and cedar wood, and again, working with the plant medicine of cedar, I think of the seeding aspect, right, of growing things. And Mama Gaia, Mama Earth knows how to grow things, right? So again, going into the science where things were grown in the natural form, or was it grown, from a petri dish? It's still things that are grown, right? So whatever your belief is about genetic engineering or cloning, in a certain way, I cloned my son, right? I got together with his father and we had genetic mutations within us and then produced, a new species, if you will, right? But it was based on our genetics. So again, just using the language in a way that tries to neutralize any form of separation that they are doing that to us, right? And mind you, we might have had controllers, we might have had domineering energies that were not fully responsible, Saturn, for the stewardship of this planet. And so maybe that's the maturation that's coming back online for us, especially initiating, seeing how the earth is going through monumental shifts and shakeups, which is forcing humanity to get together, right? So war, to me, is an antiquated, again, I think of the Montagues and the Capulets, we don't need it. It's an old tribal mentalism that no longer serves our evolution as a human consciousness, as a human species. And maybe just the humans that are here now, right? The Homo sapiens. But if we're shifting gears and the junk or the sunken DNA is actually evolving, it's rising, it's ascending, then maybe we're no longer can call ourselves the Homo sapiens, right? Maybe we're moving into Homo luminous, right? As we're starting to gather and have a new relationship with carbon. And again, going into the crystalline structures. And how I source this is, again, looking at way showers. First of all, my own deep diagnosis, going out in nature and having her show me, but also following content creators and mystics and doctors such as Zach Bush or Dr. Bruce Lipson or Dr. Joe Dispenza or Greg Braden, right? And these are just, again, some of the Gnosis teachers, Sivan Bomar. And again, tuning into my own great grandmother energy, right? Asking direct conversation with my own ancestors, pulling in. Again, I look outside of myself and I ask answers, and then things will come up for me, right? And the beings that I've just named are what I consider trusted resources. Again, you have to do your own discernment with what is true to you. To me, truth is a vibration, it's a frequency, it's a cymatic that shows up over and over consistently within myself. And so I had to learn that. I had to discern because there's been a lot of lies. Again, the language, and especially if you're using English or any language, really, it's the letters. It's there's the forked tongue, right? It's the energy that will bind you or release you, and they're woven together, right? If you look, again, studying etymology. So let's look at the astrology as let's look at the chart. Let's see if we can look here. We'll do this one here, and we'll study what's going on with what's happening on the planet. So you can see right now, I have Aries on the ascendant, and I have this at the exact time that the sun ingresses into Cancer. So you can see it's at 0 degrees, 43 minutes. I also have this on the Eastern Standard Time here in the United States. And again, I just try to follow the cosmic wheel here. Having Aries in the ascendant is just easier for us to look at and see what kind of relationship, how are the planets going to be aspecting this particular ingress. And you can see here, again, when we're speaking the language of astrology, there's varying degrees of energy that show themselves, right? I think of temperance, which temperance rules Sagittarius. So there's moderate temperatures, right? Extreme temperatures. So you can see Cancer here, the degree point, which is just entering 0, which is like a womb, is going to be conjunct or right next to within what's called a 2-degree orb to Jupiter, the planet of expansion. And again, Jupiter is in a sign for 12 months. So we can see the next annual rotation cycle is going to be highlighted with matters of security, with how we take action. Again, the ancestors, look at all 4th house matters, has to do with the mother, has to do with I see mother and father, and again, great grandmother, because Saturn's involved here. And so this is root system. This is things that we are familiar with, right? Familiar family, look at the root, patterns, dynamics, instructions, is because right next to, we just had Jupiter in Gemini, right? How we learned how we did things on this planet, what our ancestors did. And what if the sun is highlighting, hey, the way we've been taught our true ancestral lineage is not maybe the truth of what really was going on this planet. And so, and how I'm seeing that again, because Pluto's the transformer, it wants to get to things that are hidden. Again, with Aquarius, it's society, things that have been hidden in our groups, organizations, 11th house. And so, again, with the Saturn and Aries, it's almost as if Saturn, because it ruled Uranus, and again, we see it sextiling the energy here, it's showing us how the past, we were really more technologically advanced in the past than perhaps we have been able to express. Aries are now time, right? And so with this square happening, we're being brought online into perhaps the original OGs or the original ancestral lineage that was showing us like, look, we are deeply connected to the earth, right? Because, when the sun goes into Cancer, its opposition is going to be Capricorn, which you can see right here. And Capricorn, the axis point here, when you're looking at the northern and southern hemisphere, right? We look at the Tropic of Cancer in Capricorn. This is where life emerges. And you can even see the symbolism of a Cancer here. It almost looks like 2 Fibonacci spirals going into itself. So it very much is a womb space. But again, what womb is again, what feminine aspect, because all feminines have wombs. Well, even masculines have wombs, but where do we give birth from, right? From the feminine archetype. And this has nothing to do with gender, it has to do with frequency. So we give birth from the magnetic aspects of us. So Saturn's coming in and giving us a whole new structure and remembrance and saying, hey, you got to do things a new way. Again, this is the great grandmother energy through Aries. It's almost like the fierce grandmother, the fierce warrior. If you look at Black Moon Lilith, she's also part of that, right? Which is also in Sagittarius. So, and this is a time too, and Aries is also conjunct Aries too. I don't have those asteroids on here, but Eris is also, she's Mars's sister, right? The goddess of war and chaos, right? So she's seeing, we're starting to see how these energies of chaos are playing themselves out in a collective stage that don't even involve the now time generation anymore. We're here, the now time, those of us who are here and have been incarnated on this planet right now, we're here to clean this up. To clean up the wounds of the Montagues and the Capulets, if you will, right? To end these old wars that just don't make any sense, that don't belong to humanity anymore. It's starting to get rattled and shaken out and evolved out of our DNA, out of our DNA structure. But there's a choice point happening right now because we're being given on the world stage opportunities to heal our DNA. But do you want to do it artificially? Or do you want to do it naturally through our human consciousness, our evolutionary expressions of what's already happening, right? So you don't need, what I'm seeing for me anyway, is that all this is a technology that's residing within me. And anything I'm seeing outside of myself, even in terms of robotics and AI, which I call all intelligence or ancient intelligence, it's just now being able to access that within me. And how do we do that? Well, I look at the South Node, right? Things we've already mastered, which is our bodies, which is our health. We know how to heal ourselves. Our DNA, we naturally reside before the frequency game that we played in ourselves here on this planet. We naturally have the ability to create homeostasis within the body by knowing how to regulate and working with the earth, right? Because Virgo also rules the earth. So remembering, again, South Node, we know how to do this. And now Mars is coming in and it's going to be sextiling this energy on this day. So we're going to be asked to step into our bodies, taking action on our bodies in a new way. And this is also what's going to be the activation with Aries, is because if we're starting to see that our natural food sources, our water sources, how we've been planting our food has been corroded, right? Again, this is a chemical. We're all chemists in a way. And so the chemistry has been out of balance. It's been out of whack, right? Because again, values, this is Venus. We held more value in money than we held value in our own bodies. And we kept looking outside of ourselves, doctors and pharmaceuticals and beings outside of us that we perceived had this higher authority, Saturn, but we realized wasn't necessarily in our highest and best. Again, Pluto's revealing that there was some hidden agendas, right? And again, this axis point of leaving Leo, which is the king energy, that a lot of the structures on our earth with involving humanity has been only given precedent and been benefiting a few, right? The kings, if you will, and the queens. And that's where we're changing and shifting energy, right? That's what's collapsing because Pluto's come to transform all that. And Saturn's come to restructure what Aries, the child, our child mind, our childlike nature. I think of like us being the grandkids, that the great grandmother energy here with Jupiter and the sun is requiring us to grow up, right? This is a maturation process. So I think of too, what my ancestors were showing me. It's like at one point, they used to tie my shoes for me, right? When I was a kid, when I was learning to walk and learning how to dress myself, Taurus, right? Toddler. And now I'm being shown to, okay, it's time to learn to tie your own shoe, right? So we're moving into Gemini. It's time for you to mature. It's time for you to grow up. It's time for you to learn how to take care of yourself in a new way. We're going to remind you on how to do this. go to the ancestral roots, right? It has nothing to do with the outside sources. We remembered how to take care of ourselves. The great grandmothers, we talk about, herbal remedies, right? And that's what you're starting to see, especially on different social media platforms. The ancient remedy books are coming back online, right? And we're getting back to fermenting food and growing organic because we can't trust the resources. Again, Pluto's showing us where how these systems have been corrupted because again, the value was simply money. It wasn't valuing the earth. That we weren't being valued as individuals. Aries, there was great wounds. Those that were running the planet who were supposed to be stewards of us and the planet, right, of humanity and the planet, that system's been corrupted, right? That system is falling. That's the great fall of the empire that we talk about. And so again, while we still have Mercury in Cancer, again, home matters, ways to do things in the home. I'm seeing a way more DIY stuff. I'm seeing us again too. If you value organic, non-sprayed, genetically modified food, then that's where we need to put our resources, no matter what. This is also getting out of the poverty mentality because when you start reclaiming, again, Uranus is on the cusp of getting ready to shift into Gemini. We're going to be learning a lot of new ways to harvest and cultivate our food that's going to be more in relation to our ancestors. Again, knowledge that we already knew how to do. Again, the past was the future before these cataclysmic events, right? These events that we had gone into states of amnesia, of forgetting. Again, going back to the Kali Yuga phase of our relationship to light, which ties all back into the solstice energy. And I think of too the 0 degree point in Cancer. It's almost like a new seed point in the womb, right? The womb of the grandmother is she showing Mother Earth, Gaia, on how to better take care of her children, which is us, right? All the sentient life on the planet. And she's giving her new instructions, like again, lost remedies, lost knowledge, lost frequencies, sunken frequencies that perhaps again we just forgot, that have been buried in our DNA, in our structure, that's being realchemized right now, real time. And so you're going to start seeing it too. Initiation, taking action more on the body. I'm seeing more of these med beds, these new technologies. But again, I would invite you to know and remember that your body is the original OG technology, and anything that they're doing outside of you right now is just mimicking what's happening already inside of you. So just to ask the questions before you allow anything into your physical realm that might upgrade you, right, or make things better. Why not invite yourself to remember that you already know how to do these things within you and perhaps do it more organically, right? Going out into nature, using organic substances. Again, this is the dance between what am I being implanted with, right? Because we talk about seeds, right? Everything's planting. I'm planted. Are you being planted with organic or synthetic substances? This is your choice point because, again, we're free will here in this realm of consciousness. So the grandmother is giving us a choice, but it's also giving us that fierce reconciliation. Again, she's coming in and saying, I'm thinking too, like, enough, Montague and Capulets, no more war. It's all you, your brothers and sisters. At the base of it, besides your color and your religion, you have the same DNA formats, molecular structures inside of you. What's being activated is based on your consciousness. And if you keep warring with yourself and this funkin' friction component and having to do all the things, again, from Sirius just highlighted, she wanted to be looked at here. Sirius, again, grains, right? We don't need to keep poisoning our food because we're perceiving lack, right? Because this is also Venus. We are abundant. The earth is abundant. Anything that has any program or synthetic propaganda machine that's telling you otherwise, again, they have an agenda, the king's agenda, which is collapsing right now because we can start to see there's a rebellion, which even in the word rebellion is evolution, right? There's a re-evolution happening within the consciousness of humanity. And so this solstice point, I would invite you to, and especially since Mercury is going to be there, Mars taking action on the body, to do some sort of rite or ritual. When I say ritual, guys, I'm not trying to, again, trigger anybody. Ritual to me would be simply doing something that's going to remind the brain that you've just activated, because these activations are already happening anyway, right? So you're just taking some form of action within the body that's letting you know, oh, yeah, I'm having a different relationship with the sun, right? There's new light codes, new data that's being brought to my consciousness. So, how can I ground it in and integrate it in a cohesive way? Again, Virgo. So, this is Mars taking action on doing some sort of, I would say, physical invocation to the body, healing mantras, working with meditation, working with tapping, right? Start researching these tools. Use especially with Uranus going into Gemini, we're about to learn a whole new structure on the mind and how powerful the mind really is, and how it's even more powerful when it's integrated with the heart, right? Jupiter in Cancer, what you're feeling with the Trinity, right? Your thoughts, how you feel, and your will to do good, your action. And when these all are in alignment, right? I think of like, we look at planetary alignments and what these planetary alignments mean. Well, you have these planetary alignments within you. They're your organs, they're your structures, they're your cells, right? Again, studying astrocartography or astrophysiology, rather. Astrocartography is location of things. So, where are these energies located? And then the astrophysiology is where they located within the body, right? So, I wanted to, I have this book that I work with. It's called the Rulership Book, and it's basically identifies most words with the astrology. And so I was told as a form of divination to just open up to the page in Cancer, and the first word that popped out to me for like an added expression or an added idea to contemplate with the energy of Cancer. And the first where my eyes were drawn to was hydrants and water, because that rules Cancer. And then housewives, housekeepers, female household help, right? So again, this also ties to Jupiter and Cancer, right? The female household, the housekeepers, cleaning house, right? So the grandmother's coming in and showing us, hey, you didn't clean the house correctly. You need to use hot water when doing this. You need to use essential oils, get rid of the pollutants and all the shit that you're putting. You don't need any of that. That's actually harming you, right? So the great grandmother's coming in and helping us clean house, right? Not just in our governing systems, but our physical bodies, our own homes, the earth herself. We've got to learn how to clean her and be with her and clean ourselves. Because again, the earth keeps showing us, hey, beloved, I'll be fine. But you got to learn how to take care of yourself, because your species is going into extinction because of your ignorance, because you forgot what the grandmother energy was showing you and teaching you about how to live cohesively and symbiotically on this planet. So, because of our ignorance, we are killing ourselves off. And this is the conversation that we need to have again with Mercury, especially still in Cancer. We need to be having these matters of, because it's, I want to say life and death, but it is, right? Again, Cancer, the snake, it's the womb where something needs to die for us to be reborn. And so this is part of the process of death and coming back into a new cycle of things, but without having to die in the physical. And that's another form of expression. Again, opposite Taurus, which is Scorpio, we can become the alchemist. We can alchemize and become the chemist within our body to alchemize these imbalances, but it's got to be an inside out job. So this is the deep exploration. And I wanted to also pull too, I sat with the energy of the Whispers of the Ocean Oracle deck. And the card that I pulled was 44, Unexplained Wonder. And it says, magical blessings and miracles are occurring in your life. All your prayers are answered now. So this is the card. For those of you, again, you want to check out 44. And 44 is the 8. So stepping into our innate gifts, I think of the 8 like an 8, but also being in the 8, which is like the center point, right, of this toroidal field, which goes out and in. Again, if you're into astrology and you're following any of Pam Gregory's work, I know Hope Fitzgerald did an amazing podcast with her talking about the infinity wave. So I'm thinking of that as well. And what's interesting, if I'm looking at this, excuse me, guys, this is a unicorn fish. I was recently gifted by a very dear friend who was on her journeys, who's a Taurus, by the way, giving me the Taurus gifts of Taurus, this beautiful unicorn crystal. So I've been holding on to this unicorn crystal as I've been transmitting this energy. And then when I pulled the card with the unicorn fish, the energy of the unicorn's coming in. And when you deep dive with the energy of the unicorn, and again, I'm not going to get this correct because I'm still learning myself, but if you study Dan Winters, any of his stuff, and has to go with the centrifugal way energy moves like a vortex, and then going into Planck, which is going into basically 0 point. This was part of this unicorn energy because again, it goes to the tip, right? So it's like a circular, it goes from the base and then goes all the way to the tip, which again, 0 point, right? It's got to go to the getting to the point, which is also, if you look at this unicorn tip, it's got a point, right? So it's pointing, and it's also, you can see it's hexagram, it's 6 sides. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so it's hexagonal in form, which I think of the beehive, right? And the way honeycombs are shaped. So we're getting more coherent if we just get out of our way, if we start learning to forgive these old family storylines, these old warring aspects of ourselves. And I'm going to read to you a little bit about what this says has to do with 44. I'm just going to read this out loud because I feel like might be for somebody that's really dealing with these family issues and matters of family and security and safety and needing to feel safe in the nervous system, right? I feel like the great grandmother energy is coming to support us with this message, which says, let go of frustration and worry and look to the good things coming your way. Again, focus on what you want. Forgive the past and focus on, okay, how can I practice forgiveness? This card asks you to act with purpose. Act is also Virgo, because again, Mars is going to be transiting into Virgo at this time, which is our action planet. Make sure you are clear about what you want and really commit to getting it. Saturn is commitment. This is also Aries being the warrior I am going to commit. I am going to war for peace. I'm going to commit to be the peaceful warrior. And I'm going to end these timelines end with my bloodline. These warring factions without is going to end within me, right? So taking that ownership, taking that sovereignty, taking that maturity. The unicorn fish moves so slowly through the water, it gives the impression of stillness. Becoming still is an aspect of manifestation. An overactive mind can interfere with the information that you are given. Consider what your intentions are and why you set a goal in the first place. I'm thinking also too, when you're looking for clarity and if the water's constantly moving, and I think of Narcissus, right? When he's looking in the water at himself, but he can't really see his image because the water's constantly moving. There's interference, right? That's the overactive mind. To me, is the metaphor of get into stillness. Very Jupiter in Cancer. Get into your feeling state. Allow yourself to feel secure before you see it outside of yourself. What would a life look like if we had peace in the United States, if we were actually in balance and in harmony with all other countries? What would that look like? What would that feel like to know that your food sources are actually being cared for, that there's no more chemical stuff being put into our soils and our bodies that are harming us, right? What would that feel like to have our governing bodies actually truly care and are for the people, right? Getting out of this kingship mentality, but moving really towards the collective, all of humanity, not just a few of us, right? What would that look like? What would that feel like? And then start imagining it. This is also Neptune. Can you imagine a world where that is the truth, right? Again, unicorn going into Planck, going into this spiral of energy, and every now moment breathe that into existence of what you want, not of what the story you were being told, right? And even if it's an ancient story from ancestors that it just no longer makes sense of why we need to keep warring with ourselves and warring with each other. That's what's collapsing. If all it takes is asking for what you want, what are you waiting for? Why hold yourself back from your true heart's desire? Know that you have cleared the obstacles from your path and are now ready to reap the benefits. You are magical and deserve all things now. And it finally ends with the unicorn fish has a prominent horn and loves the shallow water. And the shallow, too, I think of also with Uranus going into Gemini. Uranus is going to be expanding for the next 7 years. We'll go into a deeper dive with that in another astrological reflection with Uranus ingressing into Gemini because that's a potent energy. But I'm thinking too, shallow water is just like everyday data information that we get quickly. And so we're going to be really activated. So it's saying to be very clear on your goals and what you want. And with Jupiter in Cancer, it's about wanting security, doing things in a different way in your root system, things that are familiar, getting out of your familiar comfort zone, but getting into your family roots. Again, the past was the future. So access your ancestors, talk to your ancestors, go out into the land, take your shoes off, right? And get into the soil, because that's where all things go to die, to be reborn, right? That's the fermentation. And so getting very, very clear on how we can better take care of ourselves and to feel more secure, no matter what's going on outside of us, right? Whatever warring factions we're seeing. What do we need to do to shift that within us? For centuries, stories of the mythical unicorn have persisted. The unicorn's horn is believed to have magical and medicinal properties. You can create magic by setting a clear intention. And again, this also goes back to rituals. So if you want to do a ritual on the 21st, again, getting a very clear intention. It's a seed point. Literally, it's a new seed in our wombs that are being birthed through us. So allow your genetics to shift you of what you're genetically modifying within you, so we can have a different, again, architectural construct of this reality. We're ready to give birth to the new, but you got to feel it into existence, right? Feel that that's possible, that it's already there for us. Our ancestors already knew how to do this. And it says, when you receive this card, you can intentionally use the hidden power of the universe to bring to pass your desired outcomes. So again, this is why we talk about the importance of ritual, and whatever that means for you. Obviously, working with some sort of water. I'm seeing fire as well, because Saturn's involved and there's a square happening, so something needs to shift. So really anchoring into your spiritual practices. Fire is the will, water is the emotion, air is the mind, earth is the body, and the fifth element, ether, which is all of it, right? Where we all, it's like the higher octave of all the elements. That's how I see it anyway. And that's extraterrestrial, right? So again, allowing these solar magnetic flares, these geothermic energies that are coming onto the planet to activate you, to transform you. Again, this is coming through the solstice, right? And the soul, again, look at the language of the etymology, the solstice, the soul, which is also the stomach, which is Leo, is having you being directed into a whole new frequency. So do some sort of ritual, allow yourself to really feel that security before you see it. And what could this earth look like? The possibilities of not having war. Can we live without war? And what would a planet, and what would a species, what would a human, perhaps Homo luminous, the next octave where we're going, doesn't have to play with those war codes anymore, that we can finally heal through forgiveness, through transmutation, through ending the wars within, so that we can see the wars without ending in a very powerful way. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for connecting to this channel. If you found any value, any resonance, please like, subscribe, share, send this to friends and family who are also maybe dealing with their own war wounds and that are looking perhaps for a different expression, a different interpretation, a different language. Remember, the programs in the language. So we're learning to speak on these things in a new way, in a more coherent way, in a more loving way, connected to what we think, to how we feel, and our will to do good. So thank you so much for joining this channel, guys. I love you. And yeah, we got this. Just keep doing the inner work. Just keep doing the inner alchemy, using the medicine of forgiveness. This planet could really use this right now. All right. I love you guys so much. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you, Cosmic Soul Fam, for being here. See you next time. All right. Much love. Bye.